Hello, people. So, I kind of want to go into how to actually play the trading card game portion of Booster Brat. I know in the Discord, at least, we've been pretty heavily focused on, the collecting aspect and the lore and the art and all that. But this is a trading card game, so I kind of want to intro some of the rules and just give you guys some very brief deck building or just concepts. So that you can maybe get out there and start playing with your friends. I'm hoping to do the first tournament relatively soon, so this is going to be a kind of intro into that. So I'm just going to do a kind of a brief session here. This is actually running out of Adobe Illustrator, which I'm just using it kind of as a demoing tool for now. So let's kind of just jump straight into how this game kind of works. First off, we're going to start with this over here. I'm going to drag around this card a little bit. So this is your deck area. This is where you would put your deck. And your deck is made up of 50-60 cards, 50 to 60 cards, somewhere in that range. And you're going to be drawing a hand and keeping your hand down here, looking at it, make sure your opponent doesn't see it. And you're going to be playing agents and units into your team zone here. There's 5 different slots. So this one in the middle here is Spark, and he's my team leader. You can kind of see here it's a little bit hidden, but it says team leader. So this is my team leader slot. This is Spark, and he has an item equipped to him, which is his rifle here. So yeah, he's kind of loaded up here. So you can see he's got his little gun here, and he's got his 2 buddies here. So say every single round you're going to be sending one of your characters into the playground to fight against your opponent. So you have to send somebody every single turn. That's kind of how this whole game works. Is you have to send somebody in. The round only ends when combat ends. So in this case, let's say we're going to be sending Spark in. So he's got his rifle. So he's got, looks like right here, if you add them up, 500 power. So, but if you look into his little ability here, it says equipped to Spark, he gains an additional plus 100 power. So he actually has 600 power. So say he was fighting someone like, say your opponent sent Captain in. So Captain's only got 500. So you would actually win in this case. So the whole thing with Booster Brat is a lot of these cards are only a one-time use. So say Spark beats Captain. So you would take all 4 of these cards, any of the cards that were put into the playground, and you would put them down here into your collection. So you take Captain, you take his item, you take Spark, and you take Spark's item. And all of those cards are leaving play, and you're putting them into your collection. And the whole point is you want to get 18 over here. So I'm going to cover up the 4 just because that kind of marks where I'm at. So I've got 4 collection points. I'm trying to get to 18. Basically, you're trying to fill up 2 binder pages. So I base the whole thing around just, the numbers that are important to kind of trading card games. So 11 is the number of cards in a Pokemon pack. 18 is how many cards fit into 2 binder pages. So basically a binder spread. So that's just the basics of combat here. Is you're just comparing power. Moving on from that a little bit, there's a couple different zones here. So the setting over here, you would put it here. It's kind of influencing all of your team and everything that's going into the playground. It's a permanent that stays in place, and it has an ability here at the bottom. Next, we have over here in the use pile. So this is cards that are one-time use. Like say you play Parental Hand, and then you would drop them here. And then the archive is kind of your dead pile, where it's cards that you've discarded or cards that have kind of been banished from the game. And then this is your allowance tracker here. You're getting 11 credits per turn to play whatever cards you want. So in this case, Mini Mecha Dragon Boy here costs 3, Binky costs 4, Spark costs 5. So this is the very basics of the game. The first person to 18 is going to be the one who wins. So this is just the playmat here. Kickstarter playmat. So just moving on kind of to the really rudimentary basics of all of this. So starting the game. So the very first turn, you're going to be starting with 1 agent, a basic agent. I think did I take Binky? Oh, Binky's got to go back over here. Come here, bud. You got to go back into your line. Not going to be perfect, but there you go. All right, you stay right there. So we've got these 9 basic units for the ones that were featured in Chapter 1, and then we've got an additional one, Scalpo, who was from Chapter 1.5. So the beginning of the game, both players pick 1 basic unit, and that unit is going to be dropped into their team leader slot. So this is starting the game, this is your the first character you're going to have that you can equip items to, the first character that you're going to have that is going to be influencing kind of how you play the game. It's important to get a good first turn and to kind of know what your strategy is going into the subsequent turns. So in this case, we've got 10 different agents here that we can kind of play with. Each one of them does a little bit different things. There's different strategies for each of them. We can kind of go into each one here. Like Spark says, well, Spark is your team leader. Once during your turn, you can play a friend card for -2 credits, so it works well with other friend characters. So even if he's not super friendly with his brothers in the actual story, he works well with them in the game. He kind of pairs well with Captain and Binky and the other friend characters here. And these are the icons up on the top left here. This is the white one is the friend. So he plays well with other friend characters or items. Captain, he has a search ability that kind of lets you search out cards. Binky is all about items and moving items around. We'll skip over the chibis real quick. But these are the other ones that were featured in the 3 starter decks. So Alistainer, I think, was paired with Captain. He's very disruptive to your rival and their hand and all that. So the enemy cards are a lot of disrupting your opponent, and those are the orange ones. Next, we have Fret, and Fret is Colt, which is the red one here. And see, now Fret has this ability. It says when you play Fret from your hand to your team. So this ability triggers if you don't start with Fret. So Fret is actually a good card to have if you're not intending to start the game with him. So like if he's in your original, you're drawing your 7-card hand. If he's there, he's a good card to play from your hand. You don't necessarily want to start with him. Because you can use him to find more Frets. Because this says when you play Fret from your hand to your team, you may search your deck for another scary basic character and add it to your hand. So he is a scary basic character. So he says scary right here. So if you were going to use Fret, say, to fight, and you're playing him from your hand, so you play him there, and as you're playing him, you can search your deck for another copy of Fret. So even if you use Fret to fight this turn, you'll have another one in your hand that you can use for the next turn. Just something to think about. Another one is Misprint, and she's kind of has the same ability, whereas if she wins in combat, you can search your deck for another Misprint. So it's kind of this building up your team is really important in the early stages. You want to get characters out into play so you can equip items to them, and the whole thing too is it's subtractive. If you have a good unit, if you have a really good character or something and you're using them to fight, you fight your opponent and then they leave the board. They're not staying on the board unless they have certain cards, which we'll look at later. But for the most part, for these agents here, once you use them, well, agents and all characters in general, if you use them, one-time use, they're taken off the board. All their evolutionary stages, all the items that are attached to them are all taken off of the board. So you want to build up your team early on. So that first turn where you only have 11 credits, so say Spark. Say you're starting with Spark, so he costs 5. So that first turn you have 6 additional credits to put out, to field some kind of character or items. So you definitely in that first turn you want to put out at least one more character so that when you put Spark into fight, you have another one waiting on your team already. So you lose the game also if you look at your hand and you don't have any basic units that you can put onto your team for that turn for combat. And it's really easy to search through your deck. You get 7 cards in your hand, and then also on top of that, you can do a trade-in, which means if you don't have a basic unit in your hand, you can just take all those cards, stick them onto your deck, and draw back to 7. So you can draw through almost a quarter of your deck in one turn. There's other cards that allow you to even do it even more than that. It's really about cycling through the deck. It's really important so you can find the cards that you want early on. But yeah, if you don't have a basic unit or a basic agent to put into combat that turn, you lose. So you've got to make sure that the bulk of your deck, or at least half of your deck, is made up of units and agents. This isn't one card that I kind of wanted to call out. Essential for finding more agents. So when you play this item, search your deck for a basic agent and put it into your hand. So this is a really good one because it gives a power bonus. You can stick it on Spark, you can stick it on whoever, and then at the same time, you're also being able to search your deck and basically just recruiting more cards from your deck into your hand so that you can play them in the next turn or whatever. These ones here, the chibi ones, are a little bit more complicated. They're not as strong and they have lower costs and they're kind of more niche. I wouldn't initially start out with some of them from the get-go. The thing is they do have lower costs, so you have more points to play around with that first turn. I always look at the first turn as very important because it's going to kind of set how you're playing. Scalpo is one of the characters that we introduced, or he's the agent that we introduced in Chapter 1.5, so he is working a lot with schemes. There's cards that have the keyword scheme, and he's working with those. And I'll go into kind of each of these units or each of these agents next. So Spark, he's the first one we're going to kind of look at here. He's only got one evolution, so basically you would play Spark, and then if you want to pay an additional 7, you can play this evolved agent on top of him. So much stronger, a lot higher power. He works really well when he's your team leader because he makes all your other friend characters gain power. Each one of the 3 brothers at least has their own their own weapon here. So Spark's laser rifle gives him an additional plus 100 when it's on Spark. So this is like keyed specifically to Spark. Each one of the brothers also has their own Spark, their own zone, their zone card, which is like only one of, you can see here. Oh, also I guess I can add that in. These little chevrons here, this is how many of the copies of the card you include in your deck. So this event you can only have 1 versus this event you can have 4. So this is giving you additional credits. Really strong card. This is the version that comes in booster packs. There's also an additional full color version that comes in the starter decks, and that's exclusive to just the starter decks. And then like stuff like this, like Parental Hand. So you can draw 2 cards, and if your team leader is proud, you gain an extra card. So he's proud, so if he was your team leader, you would get an extra card. So that's kind of how Spark works. He's very basic, but I kind of wanted it to be that way. I wanted all the 3 brothers to be the most basic ones since they're the starter deck characters. So Captain here, he's all about searching your deck fast, looking for drawing out agents, and then his evolutions here again, searching your deck fast, loading up your, every time you're equipping items to your character, you're getting a bonus. So this is him all about, having his armor and having all this cool stuff, all his cool gadgets, because that's what Captain's about. So he's got his own gun too. He's got his own zone. This one just gives temporary power bonus and can be played anytime since it's a quick play event. So quick play events are also really important too because events are usually played just before combat. A quick play event can happen, during combat or once you've already selected your character to go fight. So it can give you kind of a really good bonus, surprise bonus. So you always have to make sure that you're paying attention to how many credits here that your opponent has used on their turn. So see he costs 4. And say you played his pogo stick, so 3, so that'd be 7. So he's got 4 credits left, and he says, "Oh, my turn's over." So he's got 4 credits that he can use on a quick play event to play later. You always have to pay attention to what your opponent is doing while they're doing it. Even if you're thinking about what you're doing for your turn, you have to pay attention to what your opponent is doing. This is Binky, so he's got 2 evolutions as well. So if you win, you get bonuses. You get an extra. This one's actually really good. If you win, you get an extra collection point. So it's actually, counting towards your 18 cards. So this is a really good one as far as if you can win and you can equip an item to him or you can take out someone with an item, you can have a really, really good, amount of cards that you're gaining there from just one fight. He's got same kind of things here. Different cards that work well with him, like Buggy Suggy. He protects your team leader. Your Binky's pogo stick is keyed just to him where he can move around. So basically, if you were to play Binky, say you had another team leader out and you wanted Binky to be your team leader next, you could play him onto your team in whatever slot you wanted, and then you could give him his pogo stick, and then you can move him into the team leader slot, because team leader slot is very important because a lot of the cards key off of the team leader, and they have keywords that kind of come into play. So it's just important to kind of remember who's your team leader, and any character can be your team leader. It doesn't have to be your agent after the first turn. So this is Fret, and again, Fret is good kind of coming off of the bench, and this is another key combination that I kind of wanted to draw attention to. It says here, once you've evolved him, you can pay 4, so you use 4 credits, you can search your deck for a character with Create and add it to your hand. So a really good character that has Create, because here, Create, is the Conductor, and basically every time you play Conductor, it says every round after you play this card once per main phase, you regain 3 when you play a character with Create. So if you can keep playing Conductors, you can keep gaining back 3. So he's actually playing for 3. He's cost 3 for a 500 power card, which is really good for early game because most of the cards that are coming in the first couple turns are only like 200, 300, or 400 power. So if you can get him out early in 500 power and you can get an item on him, pretty strong for early game. Especially when in early game you kind of want to be playing a multitude of different cards, setting your team up. So another ones that kind of key well with that is Theme Soldier, this character gets plus 100 power for each cult character in play. So the more Theme Soldiers you're putting on your team, the stronger they're getting. And the same thing with this guy here. Sound Tracker says this character gains plus 100 power for every character on your rival's team. This includes your playground. So the bigger your rival's team is, the stronger that he's getting. And there's certain items too, like even Fret's Triangle here says the equipped character gains plus 100 power for each cult unit in play. So this is kind of one of the strategies, the whole cult swarm kind of thing, where if you can fill up your whole team with cult agents, it looks really good for them because they start getting all powerful. They start, this guy gets plus 100 power for each one. If you can load them up with Fret's Triangles, they're gaining power according to how many cult characters are out there. So it's a good strategy for putting out low cost, because these ones are only costing 4, so you can play a couple of these per turn actually. It's a good strategy for getting out a bunch of characters early on, because you always want to have reserves on your team to kind of set things up for success later. Misprint, she's a good card just because she's got all these evolutions. She's got 3 different ones. She's kind of like the Eevee of Booster Brat, where she's got all these kind of different versions. She's got Crimping, Hollow Bleed, and Smearing, which are all different ways that a card can be damaged. So this first one, Crimping, what does it say? Once per main phase, you can pay 5 to add a card from your hand to your collection. So this is if you just park her on the bench on your team, and you just kind of let her go to work, and you get an extra point every turn, and you're trying to get 18, so that really counts. It can go pretty quick. I mean, honestly, a game can be over in 4 or 5 fights, so you really want to pay attention to what cards you're attaching to all of your agents and your units. This one is just kind of paying for a bonus, and then this one is another one that's kind of it diminishes your opponent so that you can fight them more easily. Misprint is really good too, just because if you win with her, you can start your deck for another Misprint. So you're basically setting yourself up for the next turn. You always want to be thinking about the next turn, because if you're kind of coming in and just playing turn by turn, you're going to be outsmarted in the end. Alistair, he's one of the enemy agents, so he messes a lot with your rival's hand. His evolved version messes with the playground. Another one, these ones all kind of queue off of each other too, because say here, all your disappointed characters win ties in battle. So guess what? Idiotic, he's disappointed. Conscriptor, he's disappointed. Skeemty, disappointed. Alistair's Class, disappointed. These are all disappointed characters, so if you're dropping this guy in, he's kind of supporting all of your other enemy units. Idiotic, he's getting 100 power for every disappointed character in play. Again, if you can get all these disappointed characters out there, they're going to be getting stronger. Skeemty, he's good for stealing items, and then this one is another one that's good for parking next to your team leader. If you have Alistair as your team leader and you put him right next to it, all of your enemy characters are gaining power. So again, these characters all kind of work well together. Similar to what the cult is. The cult is a lot more based off of them actually having items and that kind of thing. These ones are more just if you can just put a whole bunch of these smaller units into play, it can really help out. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so this is the one from the next chapter 1.5. This is Scapo. So he's a new agent. He's a master of schemes. So there's a bunch of cards here that are mixed in from chapter 1 and 1.5 that say scheme. So AI hand, scheme, Uze trophy, scheme. So once per turn, this is Scapo's ability. It says once per turn you can discard a card from your hand to play a card in your hand with scheme for -1 credit. So he's really influencing what you can play here. So he's dropping this down to only 2 costs, 2 costs, 1 cost, 2 costs. So he's helping out a lot with that kind of stuff. So if you notice, a lot of these too are all these enemy units and items and stuff. So he's good for mixing with Alistair, kind of working in tandem with him. And these are some of the new cards here, like AI Hand. A lot of the cards from Chapter 1.5 I put into the game because I have found some gaps and stuff in the gameplay, and I wanted to fill those gaps and to speed things up and make things easier for players to kind of, have some fun and just play around with different options. So AI Hand says your rival must shuffle their hand into their deck and draw 5 cards. So it's a lot of just messing with your opponent. This is another one, the Uze trophy. You can stick it onto one of your opponent's units, and it gives them decreases their power. And then these are a couple other ones too that lets you look at your rival's hand, disrupting their turns. And it just, this one here, your rival character in the playground has -100 power as long as this guy remains in the playground. So enemy is a lot about messing with your opponent and making sure that they're not, working to their full ability. Chibis, again, a little bit more difficult. I'll kind of let people explore this on their own. Since, again, they're not as strong of agents, but they are useful in their own ways. There's a couple cards that key well with them, like this one. Equip, this Chibi binder says, equip only to a character with Chibi in their name and send this to the archive to gain 3 credits. So you can play, say, Captain, and you can play this card on him for only 1 cost, and then you can send it to the archive and you'll gain 3 back. So you're actually gaining 2. You're getting, and it's all about those credits. You really want to max out your credit card, because you want to use every single point that you're allowed. You want to gain as many points as you possibly can, because that's allowing you to play cards, and you never want to end up a turn with credits still sitting on your card. So let's go into a couple other things I want to look at here. See kind of a preview of what's coming up. So this is another one that's kind of important to the whole overall gameplays. Evolutions. So you got your basic one, it's Cutiezard here. He's a basic unit. And then you've got the evolved version of him, which is Brattyzard. He comes from Cutiezard. And then the final version of him is the champion unit, comes from Brattyzard. So this is Max Brattyzard. So these are 1, 2, 3. A lot of the, actually at this point, all of the agents only have an evolved form. There are 4 different unit evolution lines in Chapter 1 that have a champion unit. The champion units are some of the strongest cards in the game. You can see, like, Mini Mecha Dragon Boy only has 100 power versus Angsty Dragon Man has 1500. Very, very hard for him to lose. So these are the 4 kind of big hitters that you can play. And again, when you're sending Max Brattyzard to fight, he is stacked on top of Brattyzard, and he's stacked on top of Cutiezard. So when you're playing him, you've got these 3 cards that you're putting in. So if you stick him in there to your playground and your opponent sticks him in, you could be taking all 3 of these guys into your collection when you win. So it's good. That's what's so strong about these champion units, because if you attach an item to him, you've got 4 cards all of a sudden, and you can really change the course of the game and just with playing just one of these. And that's why these are just, you can see here, 1 per deck. So these are very strong cards. Some of the evolution aids I can kind of go into. So Power Chord, it evolves your character, but you have to use them that turn. Dark Shell Baby is really useful for, say you have Star Drone here, but you don't have Pubby. Like, you just can't pull a Pubby for your life, which I cry for you if you can't pull a Pubby, because he's a good boy. So you have Dark Shell Baby. So you can't find your basic unit. You can play him instead, and you can play whatever evolved form on top of him. And then something even like Chilizard here is if you have an evolved unit like Brattyzard, you can discard Brattyzard and keep Cutiezard in play, and then that'll cripple your opponent. So there's different combinations you can do there. You can kind of check those out. So the first one we're going to look at, Rhinocchio. This is just his kind of evolution line. He's got a couple other cards attached with him. This Rhinocchio doll, amazing artwork by High Horsey. But it lets you search out any card with Rhinocchio in its name. So this is a good card for if you're trying to build this evolution line or use Dark Rhinocchio and Rhinocchio before. You can search out those cards that you need. This is a good one for if you know your opponent is playing with heavy hitters like Rhinocchio. This is an anti-Rhinocchio card, so basically they lose all their bonuses. Going to the next one. Let's look at Cutiezard. So he pairs well with Binky. Since Binky is excited, so it says other excited characters on your team gain plus 100 power. So, you can look at a lot of these keywords tied heavily into the gameplay. And this is the strongest card in the game here. Max Brattyzard, he's got 1800 power, so he's a powerhouse. He's able to beat pretty much anything. I think there's only one card that can challenge him. Moving on even here to Pubby Star Drone and Sonic Star Drone. This is a kind of a tricky line because you can discard him and you can discard items. You can remove him or return a character on your team to your hand. Because a lot of different events and a lot of different abilities trigger when a character is played. So this one is allowing you to replay cards and re-trigger their abilities. So So yeah, those are the 4, I think. Oh, this is the last one here. Dragon Boy. So this is introducing a key concept from him. When he evolves to Dapper Dragon Man, it says this character enters play with 1 counter. If he loses a battle, remove a counter and move all items equipped to it to the use pile or enter it to your team zone. So this is basically his counter is like an extra life. So if he loses, he can spend that counter to stay in play. But those counters kind of come into a little bit more with these Neo ZFT cards. So the ZFT is a very, very strong basic unit. So you can just play him if you just want to spend all 11 of your credits and just play him immediately. He's got 1,000, so he's gonna beat a lot of lower level and lower power units. But it is a risk because you're spending all 11 of your credits just on one guy. So let's see what he does. So it says pay 8, add a ZFT Simian from your collection to your team, place an identical clone token in your collection. So this keys well with the ZFT Simian here. And this card enters play with 2 counters, and this card gains plus 300 power if the ZFT is your team leader. So if you park your ZFT in the team leader slot, this guy is gaining a buff every single time. And then this one, once you win with a ZFT Simian, if you're using the ZFT here, his ability, and you pay, you can keep pulling those ZFTs out of your collection and replacing them with a clone token in your collection. So you can keep kind of recycling the ZFT as it's fighting. This one says this card enters play with 2 counters. Remove 6 counters from your Neo monster characters and add a ZFT character from your deck or use pile to your hand. So that plays into all those counters. So this one says he enters play with 2 counters. Enters play with 2 counters. Dapper Dragon Man enters play with 1 counter. So if you're removing those counters, you can keep drawing out more ZFT cards. So these ones all key well with each other. And then these 2 are good for supporting your Neo units because you can add a Neo character to your hand from your deck. So again, good for searching out your ZFT cards. And then this is a setting that's giving power bonus to all your Neo characters. So ZFT is a good archetype to kind of follow because you're allowed 4 of these ZFT Simians and you can kind of keep reusing them. And then you have the ZFT and you can have 4 of those in your deck, so you can keep using them too because you can keep drawing them out and you can use them up to 4 times. So you can really do some damage with this combination of cards. So that's one of the main kind of archetypes. Another one is dinosaurs. So I love dinosaurs. They're my favorite. There's going to be more in Chapter 2 as well. But we've got 4 from the first, from Chapter 1. They're all kind of lower power characters, but they key well with, like this unit gains 100 power for each scary character in play. They're kind of all keyed off different keywords. So this one's proud, this one's scary, this one has create. So they kind of pair well with different decks. And this one here is you can move this unit to the use pile to play any character from your hand whose name ends with Ix, Us, Don, or Soar in place of this unit. So any of the dinosaur characters, you can just pay 2, move this guy to your use pile, and then you can play any of these cards for only cost 2 from your hand. So he kind of unites all these dinosaurs, and he's from Chapter 1.5, and I thought he was another key card that kind of united all of these characters and allows them to kind of work well with each other. So yeah, he's one of my favorite cards from Chapter 1.5. And then these are the big hitters. So these are more of the basic units like Gaiaka, Lord Raridora, Ancient Glut, and Great Uncle Otto. So Gaiaka, it's just super strong basic unit, costs 11. Same thing with Lord Raridora. He's actually the strongest card in the game because he can't lose. This card must be played from your hand and cannot lose in battle. So it's pretty good. And it says move all your cards in your team zone in your hand to the archive and add 2 minion tokens to your team. So this basically wipes your whole board and adds some minion tokens for you to kind of play around with. But he can't lose. So if there's any super strong card that he's fighting against, he automatically wins. The Ancient Glut is a late, kind of early game, late use character where if you draw him early, this character gains plus 200 power at the start of every battle phase. So every turn you don't use him, he's getting 200 power stronger. So the first turn he's only got 0, but if you keep him around for 3 or 4 turns, he's got 800. He can get strong, the more turns he's left just sitting on your bench. And then Great Uncle Otto is another one where it's like if he loses in battle, you can sacrifice a weaker character to keep him on your team. So he's a good reuse character. He costs 9. He's got 800 power, so he's got good power, and he's good for reusing. And you're allowed 2 per deck, so you can actually play him a couple times. Let's see. Get into some of these more essential. So even like settings here, I won't go too heavily into this, but these are permanent. So these settings you play from your deck and you pay the cost and just put it into the setting slot. And these do different things, like you can buff up your Neo characters, give them permanent buffs. You can search for items. You can basically pay to copy cards, pay to shuffle and draw, pay to negate items. You can give bonuses to teams. So these are just really good cards that are maybe including 1 or 2 of these in your deck. You don't need a ton of them because you're going to be leaving them in there permanently. The one that I really like is Bum Vault. Basically creates a second hand. It says, place the top 4 cards of your deck under this card, and you may play them as though they are in your hand. So if you have cards you don't want to play from your hand quite yet, and you want to keep, cycling through your deck, you can take those cards, you can stick them in Bum Vault, and they actually can't be affected by any cards that would normally affect your hand. So say your opponent plays some card that wants to discard cards from your hand. If he's in Bum Vault, he's safe. So it's creating a second hand, and I think it's really useful. This is because it allows you to kind of draw through your deck faster without having to get rid of cards you might want in the future. Some of the deck essentials here. These are just like, I think these cards should probably be in almost every single deck. So just your basic trading card. It says discard a card from your hand and add a basic unit or item that is the same cost from your deck to your hand. So getting rid of cards from your hand to draw out cards that you do want. The 9 pocket binder is super great too because you attach it to a character and you're getting extra credits every single one of your start of your rounds. Loud noises is a great one. Super annoying though because it's a quick play event, so it can come into play even when combat has already started. So it gives a buff to your weakest character. So your character with the lowest base power gains 300 power until the end of the round. So it's really annoying when you think you're going to win and then all of a sudden you didn't realize that your opponent didn't spend those last 4 credits and they played this, make some noise, and all of a sudden their weak character is really strong and they beat you. Happened to me several times and it's very annoying. But it's a really good card and there's 4 of them per deck, so you always have to be kind of looking out for it. Same thing with this one. It's another quick play one where if you know you're going to lose and you really don't want to lose that character, you can play this card and it'll end the turn without the fight actually concluding. And then these ones, chase cards, are great just for searching out any card that you want. Say you really want your, you can't draw or you can't find your Bradizard. You can use this and you can draw your Bradizard immediately. It's giving you whatever card you want of that rarity. So those 3, there's only 1 per deck, but they're really good for just searching out whatever card you want in the exact moment that you want it. Some additional ones, these are just more fun ones to kind of mess with your opponent. So like this one, Wolf Dodge, another quick play. If your opponent plays an event and you just don't like what it does, you can negate that event. Another quick play here is a Viral Washbot. So you can say your opponent has a really good item attached to their character and you don't want it. You can play some lower cost item on your character and discard it and it'll get rid of that item. Unwanted Armor, minus 500. You stick it on your opponent's card, on your opponent's team, and it just gives them minus 500 power. It's so annoying. Really, really annoying. And these other ones here, like the Alien Mask, if you would lose, it would force a tie. And ties are really important as well because in a tie, no one gets all the cards. You take whatever cards you fought with and you add them to your collection, and your opponent takes whatever cards he fought with and adds them to his collection. So this is a good one for if you tie and you attach this item to them, you're getting an extra point because this is going into your collection. And Jetpack is another good one for just attaching to your characters and moving them out wherever you need them, because there's certain cards that will key if your cards are the end in Team Zone 1 or 5, or if they're in your team leader slot. This is a good card for just moving your characters around to trigger different effects and different abilities. Some of the Chapter 1.5 editions that I thought were really fun, because again, I was trying to plug up some of the holes here that were in the game and just to make things faster and more fun. So this event here, nope. Your rival can't play events basically for the rest of the round. So you would play this and they wouldn't be able to play a Wolf Dodge or make some noise that would really mess with your combat. So it's really locking in the fighting and it's not allowing them to mess with you anymore. Then these 2 units here, the Tunnel Bear and the Faux Tortoise, they're good because they're low cost. They only cost 3. They're not super strong, but they're good for getting into play and they have good effects when they trigger. So this one here, like the Faux Tortoise, when you play this unit, your rival loses 2 credits. So again, you're taking away credits from your opponent. That's cards that they can't play on their next turn, which is great. And actually looking at it now, Faux Tortoise. Let me look back here. If I want to look back to, which one was it? Oh, it was, oh, he's not Cutizard. Oh my god. How dare they? Pubby. How could I have mislabeled him? Star Drone. So here, pay 3, return a character on your team to your hand. So that's a good card for, you know, if a card that has a triggering ability. So see, when you put a unit, your rival loses 2 credits. So you could use that ability from Star Drone, and you can keep discarding this card, and you're keep taking away, you know, credits from your opponent on their next turn. Tunnel Bear. So you can play this unit anytime, even during battle, and the target unit is minus 200 power. So this is like a quick play unit that can just pop up even once combat has already started, and it can really mess with your opponent. And then this is probably like one of the best or most useful cards in the game. It's the Shuffler, and it says characters in your team zone next to Shuffler can have an additional item equipped to them. So, you know, it's allowing your characters next to it to have 2 items attached to them. So, which is, you know, if you can get some good items attached to your characters, you're giving them just so much more strength and so much more power. So this is a really, really useful card to kind of just, you know, camp out in your team and just let everything around it gain the bonuses from it. So I think that might be all the things that I was going to kind of cover in this video. So you can see there's lots of different. Oh, actually that's not true. I completely forgot about this. These are the new items that were put in from chapter 1.5, and these are all really strong. They're only 2 per deck here. You can see the little 2 per deck. They're strong. They're items. They don't actually give any power bonus, but the abilities are so strong that they're worth it. So Captain's Brute Force is a fun one to play with. So if you have a really strong character that you're fighting with, and you're really, you know, you beefed him up and you're putting him in there to fight, and then your opponent is just like, oh man, I'm not gonna win, so I'm just gonna put in some tiny loser character, and, you know, not give me any extra points. So if your guy has this attached to him, you can take him back into your hand and reuse him on the next turn. So it's you know, you're saving yourself for another turn. And maybe you can win in a second battle, and you can get even more points in the next turn. Biggie's Quick Wit, so you can attach another item to them. Yeah, and then Misprints Velocity. This matches whatever character you're fighting. So if you have a really weak character and you're fighting someone stronger, it'll automatically match their base power. So say you have a 200 power guy and you're fighting someone who has 800. All of a sudden your guy has 800. Great. And if you're sitting next to, say, a Shuffler, and you stick a slab on him, then all of a sudden he's got 1300. So, you know, good combination card. Sparks Road Rage, basically just characters that are more angry, you get more credits. You're just kind of hoping that you can draw some angry characters, or play some cards that have angry on it, and it'll get you more credits. And the more of these that you can attach, the more credits you get. So those are some of the really fun cards from Chapter 1.5. And they can attach to any character that are not really queued to Captain, Binky, or Misprint or anything. So you can attach this to whatever characters you want. You know, they're fun. All these artworks here too, just such amazing work by all these artists. We had them commissioned to do each of the brothers and Misprint. So I thought all these 4 were just like, you know, these are my favorite cards of the set. I really just like how they came out. I really like how unified they are, and tying into the next chapter, which is Ring Race. And Ring Race is all about, you know, the Pocketeers implementing this racing system where if you can get from point A to point B, whoever does it the fastest is going to be winning, you know, winning the glory, winning riches, winning whatever cards they want. And it's really enticing all of these agents and all of their, you know, their minions to go out there and race and to get the best cards that they possibly can, so they can win and they can get their own personal glory. Because in the end, it's all just helping out the cult to collect everything in the universe. So as this story is starting, or the second part of this, of, you know, chapter 2, the brothers are kind of all fractured. They're going their different ways. They're all racing and competing against each other. So there's a lot of different, you know, emotions going into it, because they're fighting against each other now. They're not all on the same team. They're kind of going for their own individual glory and their own goals. So that's, you know, setting up chapter 2. But yeah, this is a lot of the, you know, basic strategy. There's a ton of other different cards as well, that kind of tie in and give you different things you can play with, or give you different kind of card combinations. And this is the first game I've ever designed. I've never designed a game before, and I've had so much help from so many great people, so many different game developers and designers, people that played Metazoo, people that played Flesh and Blood, people that played Magic. So this is kind of an amalgamation of all those different kind of games. And to me, what it feels a lot like is actually kind of like poker, because you're bluffing a lot of the times. You're putting your card in there, and it might look like you have a certain power, but then you might be playing cards to enhance that or to reduce your opponents, and you're really betting that you're going to win by attaching more cards to them. Because obviously, like say here, looking at going back to our example with here, say you attached Power Chord to Max Bradizard. So say this 4 here, you'd have these 4 cards. You're putting those 4 cards into fight. You better win, because if you lose, your opponent's getting all 4 of those cards, and that's like a huge gain for them. So it is really betting that you're going to be able to win that turn. And at the same time, it's really setting up for your next turns as well, because if you spent all your money and all your time setting up this amazing combination here, and you're putting it in, and then you look at your team, you go back to your team zone, and you're like, oh, I don't have anything left. Like say, oh no, all I have left is this mini Mecha Dragon Ball. I have to start all the way from square one. I don't have anything else set up. The next turn is going to be really bad because my opponent has been playing some heavy, strong cards. So you always want to have some additional options. You always want to be worrying about the next turn. Even if you play cards you're not going to use that turn. Say you sacrifice Mini Mecha Dragon Boy this turn, and you play Sparks Laser Rifle on him for the next turn, because the next turn somehow, or say you have in your hand, you have his evolved version. So the next turn you're going to have the evolved version. So you pay 7, and all of a sudden you've got 700 plus 200, and then the additional buff from it being equipped to Sparks, you got 1,000. Always think ahead. Never think of just the turn that you're playing. You're always thinking about what cards you can play for next turn that can help, and always use all of your credits. So this is basically, the game in a nutshell. There's a lot more nuance and stuff to it, but this is the basics. And if you want to go through and test out some of these card combinations, I would highly recommend, at least from the beginning, sticking to that first turn, figuring out who your starting agent is, how do you want to play, what which of these 5 different themes are you going to use? Are you going to use Friend or Enemy or Cult or Neo or Prime? Which one do you want to use? And then after that, you can kind of go into these different card combinations of, do you want to have evolution lines, or these cards are evolving in each other and you're building up strong characters from that? Do you want to have more synergy cards where like you're playing settings, you're playing events and items, and you're helping each other out? Even here, this is the one I actually completely forgot about, Shadow Tokens. This is another one you can kind of look at. I won't go too much into it right now, but Shadow Tokens are another really fun thing. They're all queuing off, Sparky the Cheese and Moldoroid, and Shadow Tokens are super fun to play with, and I think that's another strategy you can look at, Shadow Tokens. Obviously, these big hitter ones are good for if you don't have anything else in your hand. You can just spend all your points, put these big boys out there, and they can take care of that turn. But again, you're not setting yourself up for another turn. If you're spending 11 to put Lord Raridora in play and you're wiping your board clean, you're not going to have much for that next turn. So it's important to use them sparingly. You've got dinosaurs here, especially with Amoebasaur and some of the cards that are coming in Chapter 2. Really fun to play with. And yeah, there's obviously these different cards here that are essentials to the deck, really fun to play with. And I'm on Discord if you want to talk more about it. We can talk. I'm still planning out how exactly we're going to do the tournament, and how we're going to set that all up. I know Grave Troll is having an in-store event next month, teaching some new players how to play. I'm going to be at a convention in LA, and we're actually going to have a table where we're going to be teaching the game as well. So the whole idea here is to bring as many players in as possible. So if you have anyone that you think might be interested, definitely reach out to them. Have them reach out to me. I'm always open to cutting deals with people, giving them starter decks to try to just get people roped in, get them involved, get them hooked on the cards. Because the more players that we can bring in here, the stronger it is, because the more players there are, the more cards that they want, the more cards getting opened. Helps everybody, helps me, and it just really builds out the community and makes it stronger. So yeah, I think I'm going to call it here, but thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for being a part of all this, and I will talk to you guys later.